Hello, beautiful people. Happy day. I hope that you're doing amazing wherever this finds you. I hope you're well rested. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're joyous. And even if you're not, I hope that your day gets better. It is officially fall here in the DMV. The leaves are changing, the leaves are falling, the weather's getting cooler. It's just been a really, really magical moment. I love the fall. I love autumn. I love everything about it. I love Halloween. I love the spooky stories, spooky light, not spooky scary, but I love the spooky stories. I like hanging out with my friends. I like gathering around a campfire. I love it all. I love hay rides, pumpkin patching, apple picking. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And this is perfect, actually, because today I'm going to be honoring my granny, which is my great-grandmother on my mother's side. And she was born on October 18th, 1912. 1912. And I knew this woman. Me and this woman were so close. She was one of my first best friends. Yeah, the last episode, the last installation of this project I did, I was talking about my grandmommy, and her birthday was in January, so I recorded her podcast in January. She and I are both January babies. And today I want to talk about my sweet granny. My granny was a tiny woman, okay? When I met her, later in life, I don't know if she shrunk or what, but she was a tiny, tiny, tiny lady. I remember just whenever I would go up to Philly for Thanksgiving or Easter or Mother's Day or whatever holiday we were up there for, I would just be sitting around her, talking to her, getting her wisdom, playing. I used to do what do you call it? Workbooks. I used to love workbooks, working out math problems and reading problems. I was a nerd. It is what it is. And my granny entertained me. She would play with me. She would try all my experiments. I remember making something called sunflower seed soup as a child. My granny ate it up and said she loved it. She lied, but she loves me. And she was just down. She was just down for whatever. And I miss that lady. I miss her so much. I miss that woman so much. When I think about her, I just think about joy. I think about contentment. I think about pleasure. I think about rest. The relationship with my granny started before I even got here. She and my mother were very close, okay? I think my mom was one of her favorites. And so I think I just inherited that favoritism or that favor that my mother had with my granny. But I loved granny. First of all, I love older people. Those are my people, okay? I love hanging out with them, learning from them. There's just so much confidence and contentment and peace that they have. You know what I mean? Like the elders have. And I was just soaking it up, and I felt so safe and so seen with her. When I was born, my granny came down to Virginia Beach, Virginia, where I was born, because that's where my dad was stationed, and helped my mom raise me, take care of me. So our bond has been really, really close for a really long time, basically my entire life. And so her death was devastating to me. I lost my first best friend. I lost my first confidant, the first person to even believe in my gifts. My granny used to call me Leisha Lori, right? Leisha Lori. And I never really knew. I never really knew what that meant, but she would just always be like, Leisha Lori, Leisha Lori. And then I found out later on that there was a journalist in Philadelphia by the name of Lisa Thomas Lori. And she was respected in her craft and things like that. And my granny was calling me that because I was really inquisitive. And for people in the Philadelphia area, you probably know who I'm talking about. But I was a very inquisitive child. I had a lot of questions. I loved interviewing her. There's a tape recorder somewhere in my mother's house with her voice on it and her stories. But I was interviewing people from a really, really young age. And even as I reflect on that, I'm like, yo, Granny really showed me what my mission was in life. Granny really blessed me. She was the first person to bless me with acknowledging what gifts I have. And for that, I will always be grateful. I'm just realizing that as an adult, my granny, my great grandmother blessed me. She saw in me what I couldn't see in myself as a child. And she called those things out, and she always encouraged my experimentation and my play, and my fun and my curiosity. And what I also remember is that I would do these workbooks, like I said before, and my granny would get some of the answers wrong. I would never tell her though, because that's my girl. Okay. I don't you know what I mean? I didn't feel the need to correct her. You know what I'm saying? How dare I? What little 10-year-old girl gonna correct my 80-something-year-old great-grandmother, right? But I didn't realize until later that my great-grandmother had her first child at 15, right? So she grew up really, really fast. And she was also born in 1912. And so it was a different time that she was growing up in. My granny was not unlearned. Let's not, I'm not doing that, but I also understand that the privileges that I had as a child, she did not have in 1912. And I couldn't see that gap until I got older. Let me start off first off by saying her name. Her name is Elizabeth. Elizabeth Stewart, my granny, my great grandma. She was affectionately called Lizzie. But everybody basically in the family, because she was the matriarch, called her granny. Whether she was your grandmother or, I don't know, your great grandmother, your great great grandmother, she was known as Granny. And I was writing down things that my great grandmother taught me, things that I gleaned from her, things that I received from her. And the number one thing that I received from my granny is permission to rest. Okay, this woman would be knocked out. like during Thanksgiving dinners, after dinner, she would have her food. She would sit in her chair that she always sat in next to the door, and we would look over and she'd have her head back, her mouth open, knocked out, right? Amidst all the chaos, all the noise, all the rambunctious children, my granny would find time to fall asleep. And so over the weekend, I had the pleasure of being able to attend Exodus Summit put on by Rashida Dow and Stephanie Perry. It was amazing as always. And on the first night, they had a guest, Octavia Raheem, and she came and held a rest session for us, like helping us rest, right? And one of the questions that she asked us was, who modeled rest for you? And I really had to go back, like starting back to my childhood. Where did I see rest? And Granny was a person who modeled rest for me. And I want to read to you what I wrote down in honor of my great grandmother. All right. So the question is, who modeled rest for me? And this is what I wrote. Granny would fall asleep in the middle of Thanksgiving, right after dinner, in her seat placed right next to the door. She would be laughing and talking like everyone else. Then you'd look over and she would be knocked out, head laid back, mouth open. There was so much noise during Thanksgiving, cheering and yelling at the television during the game, laughter and competing conversations, elevated voices, cold air coming from the door swinging open and closed. In all of that, Granny slept. No matter what was going on, Granny, my great-grandmother, made sure to take her time and rest. Granny would rise before the sun, take her bath slowly and early. She would prepare her toast with apple butter and black coffee. Her morning ritual was calm, grounding, and gentle. She savored her meals, lingered over her coffee. She let me lie in her bed just a little longer, 10 minutes longer. Granny retired early. Granny didn't rush. Granny didn't hear everything, yet did not ask everyone to repeat themselves. Or maybe she did hear, but chose not to respond to everything said. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe after a while, you've heard all the words and all the combinations of words and all the voices that sometimes you preferred muffled hums in silence. Granny never learned to drive. Granny chose what to worry herself with and what not to. What was the point of learning how to drive with so many children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews? Granny opted out of what didn't call to her, with no apologies. After Granny passed, money was found hidden around her bedroom. She was born in 1912 and had survived the horrors that we read about in grade school. She lived through the Great Depression and never trusted a bank again. Who knows what other secrets Granny carried in her heart? Granny later died of a heart attack, and it broke my heart. Granny always invited me into her bedroom, into her bed to rest early, to sleep well. Her rest is one of the best gifts she's ever given me. I don't know what conversation she had over coffee with the Lord, or her love, or the thoughts she kept to herself. All I know is that she always took her time. She made no apologies for rest. She kept her morning and evening rituals, committed to herself. She even invited me into that rest. She invited me to disconnect, to be held and cradled. She invited me into slow living. So that's what I wrote about my granny. And that line, slow living is such a trend now. And I realized the elders always had it right. I think about my grandmother and my pop, her husband, and how they lived slow too, right? It's like they knew something that we didn't know. And all of our ambition and anxiety and wanting to achieve, wanting more, they knew how to rest. They knew how to pause. They knew how to reflect and how to be in the moment. And my granny was very much in the moment. She was such an in the moment woman. I remember waking up. She used to wake up before the crack of dawn, okay? Early, dark outside early. And I have this vivid memory of her waking me up. And I was like, can I just get 10 more minutes, please? 10 more minutes. And she said, okay. And the next morning, she just let me sleep in 10 minutes longer. And I was like, no, Granny, you're supposed to wake me up and then let me sleep for 10 more minutes. But she did everything slow, but she had these rituals that she kept. I still remember the scent of black coffee and apple butter and toast that she would have every morning. I remember the music she would listen to. I remember her turning on the news. I remember the noise. The For those from the Philadelphia area, y'all know the soundtrack to the news. Dun 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 dun. Right, like she would watch that every evening. Just being around her was just like, I just felt so safe. I felt so seen. Like nothing could get to me as long as I had my granny with me. And even as I do the math, she was 78 when I was born. She was 78 and she was almost 90 years old, like a few months shy of 90 when she passed away. She lived a long life. And I imagine that she lived such a long life because she moved slow, because she chose to live slow. And when I mean live slow, I mean taking her time, savoring her meals, like even savoring when she would put eye drops in her eyes. I remember that, like her just having this ritual that she would do and take her time. She would rise early so that she could go slow. She would take her time, and she was also older. And I imagine that, she could move as fast as maybe she could before. And so she knew that about herself. So she rose early before everybody else to get in that bathtub before everybody else so that she could start her morning routine. I remember going to church with Granny and sitting next to her during the church service. My grandmother would be singing in the choir. It was a small church in the neighborhood, and I would be sitting next to my granny, and she used to carry candies in her purse. And my favorite candy that she used to carry was the strawberry joints, the one that has like the green top, and it's like cellophane, and it looks like a strawberry. Those are my favorite candies because the only other candy she carried was like Werther's, like the butterscotch joints. I did not like those. I was not a fan. And I was like, Granny. And she had the mints. And so like during service, I would just go sit next to her, just to be in her presence and also to get candy. You feel me? But me and her had such a lovely and close relationship. And I'm actually shocked that I'm not crying because Granny was the first person to like make me feel seen. You know what I mean? Like I come from a huge family. My family is huge, okay? Granny made me feel seen, but I also feel like she made everybody feel seen. You know what I'm saying? And I talked about this kind of with my grandmommy, how she took time to have individual relationships with her children, her grandchildren, and everybody had this like special relationship with her. Me and Granny, though, not gonna hold you, me and Granny were tight. Okay, we were really close. Granny also taught me other things, right? She taught me, again, like I said, slow is love. Me and my granny used to be pen pals. I would write her in Philly and she would write me in Maryland. We were so close. We would talk on the phone, but we would also write each other letters. And I still have the last birthday card that she ever sent me. I still carry it with me. I have it with me along with other relics. I have my baptism Bible or my christening Bible that my grandmother signed for me. So I have these things with me to remind myself that I'm never alone. Now I feel like I'm going to cry. That my ancestors have been praying for me, are praying for me, are always with me and want the best for me. So my granny taught me the magic of writing love letters, to people that I love. To this day, I still love love letters. There's something personal about someone taking the time to handwrite you something, or maybe even type, to type you something and to send it in the mail and wanting you to experience joy and a surprise, of you receiving a love letter from them. My granny and I, like I said, used to send each other letters. And before she passed, I didn't get to send her my last letter that I wanted to send her. So during the funeral service, when you walk past the casket one more time, the church was packed, by the way. Just so many people loved her and loved on her. And she loved so many people. When you do that last walk around, I placed my last love letter in the casket with her because I needed her to get that letter. So she taught me the magic of writing love letters, the magic of taking your morning slow. Like I said, this woman every morning like clockwork before the sun rose, apple butter, toast, and black coffee. Okay. Also, my granny ain't have no teeth. Did I mention that? My granny did not have no teeth, but she also ain't have no shame. Okay. She did not wear dentures for nobody because y'all know what it is. Yeah, that's something I wrote down. Like my granny taught me to laugh and show some gum. Okay. Like I said, she didn't have any teeth and she laughed hard, loud, and wide. And she had no teeth and no shame. No teeth and no shame. She was just living and loving her life. And I loved that about her. Like just her shamelessness, because why is there any shame in aging? Like, why should I have to, you know what I'm saying? Like, why should I have to pretend to be someone I'm not for you? What? so, so she was just unashamed and just joyful. She also taught me to pour into myself first, take sacred time for myself. Again, going back to the morning routine that she had, rising before everybody else got up in the wee hours of the morning to make sure that she had the time that she needed to get right, to pray, to read, to eat, to rest, and to go about her day. So first thing in the morning, she prioritized herself. The next thing she taught me, again, going back to rest, is rest when you need. Like I said, Granny would fall asleep mid-conversation, unapologetically, okay? And if you say something about it, she gonna correct you. I have this memory of the kids coming in and out of my grandmother's house. My family, like a lot of families, lived intergenerationally, right? So there was my grandmother, there was my grandmother and my grandfather, my pop and my grandma. Her mother, my granny, my grandmother's mother lived with her. My uncle, my grandmother's son lived with them, and my cousin, my uncle's son, lived there too. And at any time, there were multiple generations living in that household, right? And that was like one of the most beautiful lessons I was taught, was to live with family, to live with your loved ones. There is no shame in not being able to live by yourself, right? And I really do believe that because my granny lived with her daughter and because my grandma had help, for things like that, they were able to do more things. They were able to be less stressed out. They were able to save more money, I bless my grandmother for taking care of my granny in the end of her life, like allowing her to live with her, it was just beautiful to see. And today people, talk about how shameful it is to have to live with your parents and stuff like that. I didn't grow up with that context. I never felt shame. I never felt that it was weird for family to live together, because literally there's this town that my family lives in, and where my granny, my grandma, my pop, my uncle, my cousin live, down the street there is another cousin. Down the other street there's my other cousin. Like my family, my great aunt Eunice used to live down the street from my grandmother, her sister, right? So I was very used to family being near family, relying on family. Like family was such a huge part of my upbringing, which is why Philly will always have like this like soft, warm, fuzzy place in my heart, because that's where my family is, right? That's where I learned all about family and all about love. And so, yeah, there's no shame in needing help. There's no shame. Like if you have the resources, if you have the family structure also, and also if you come from a context where your family is supportive and loving, like all those things, considering all those things, because I know all families are not created equal, and I want to honor that. But I'm so blessed that I come from a family that, yeah, they have their problems, they have their issues, but at the end of the day, family shows up for family. And that's something that I really, really am grateful that I got to experience. I also found out later in life that my granny was dating, okay? Like she had a boyfriend out in Philly, and I don't even know, do you call it boyfriend? The elders used to say, oh, your little friend, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not about to do that to my granny, because that was a grown woman. So her friend, her partner, her boyfriend, man friend, they were in a relationship together. And apparently I found out that she was in an abusive relationship, and that enrages me, because how dare you put hands on my granny? And she left. She called her grandchildren to come and pick her up, to come and get her, and they saved her. In her old age, she left an abusive partner and moved in with my aunt and then with my grandma. And I'm so glad that she was like, you know what? I'm over this. I wasn't there, obviously, so I don't know how it happened. But I'm just so grateful that, one, she advocated for herself and was like, you know what? I deserve better than this. And I'm also grateful that she had a community of women around her to come and save her and support her, and rescue her, to come and get her, So I love that. I love that she said, yeah, I'm older, but I'm still not about to suffer just because I'm old. Excuse me, right? Just because I'm older? Absolutely not. I really respect that about her. My granny taught me to spend quiet mornings in reflection, meditation, and quality time with myself. She also taught me to leave my heart open. And she also taught me you're never too old to have sleepovers. Me and my granny used to have sleepovers all the time. Whenever I would spend the night over my grandma's house, say I was with all my other cousins, granny would come in the living room and be like, Alicia, specifically you, do you want to come and sleep in the bed with me? Yes, granny. Yes, I do. So she and I would stay up. We would talk. She would show me all her jewelry and I would ask her where she got this from. I would ask her all the stories, tell me everything. I just wanted to know everything about this woman. I was just so enamored and in love with this woman. And so when she passed away, it broke my heart. I felt like I had lost, again, the first person to really see me, the first person to really understand me, the first person to even be curious about my quirks, right? She didn't find me annoying, or maybe she did, but she never showed me. But she knew that I was weird, and she loved letting me flag my weirdo flag, my freak show flag. You know, she never made me feel shamed for that. I never felt like I had to shrink or be someone I wasn't just to be in her presence. She loved the wild parts of me. And I loved her storytelling and I loved the calm parts of her. And I'm sure maybe in her past life, right, when she was younger, maybe she had wild parts too. You know what I mean? And maybe she saw that in me and was like, oh, this is something familiar. My granny also taught me to love and appreciate the squirrels. My granny was in relationship with the squirrels. She took care of them. So much so, like I hear stories from my mother and her brothers and sisters talking about granny with these squirrels, right? But I have a vivid memory of us camping when I was like 4 years old and granny was sitting in a chair on the beach and, you know, we were cooking and stuff like that. The squirrels would not leave this woman alone. It's like they could smell, you're a safe person. Like you're our friend, you're our kin. And my granny had to hold a stick and like, you know, shoo some of the squirrels away from her. But like they loved her. That really was her energy. She was just so magnetic, you know, just so magnetic. And this is my experience of her in her later years, of course. And it's so interesting because my grandmother, her daughter, had a green thumb that my mother got from my grandmother, right? And I have a love of nature. And I really do believe that our love of nature, our reverence of nature, our care of nature, like us feeling like we are a part of nature, yes, we benefit from nature, yes, but we should also give back to nature. I feel like I learned that from my granny at the root, right? And so we see the different heads of that. We see the different heads of that flower that she planted in each of us, each of her children. We're all somehow close to and connected to the earth. And I really do believe that started with her. And I'm sure it started with somebody before her. Wherever she learned it from, she passed it on to us. And I'm so grateful for that. Doing these episodes is always so hard because I always feel like these episodes are never long enough. They're never detailed enough. Like, how do you really capture the essence of someone's soul in a podcast episode? You feel me? Like, it's almost like you had to be there, but I'm trying my best to represent her well and to express my experiences with her and what I've learned from her in hopes that you can learn something from her too. But I really do recognize and realize and honor my granny, Elizabeth Stewart. I love her so much. I miss her every day. The day that she passed away will be a day that I will never forget. I was in Florida with my family, my immediate family, and we got a call. My mother answered the phone in ways that you know something's wrong. We all know what that phone call is like. The silence, the gasping, the pausing, the stopping movement. You know something is different. This is not just a regular call. And my mother hung up the phone. And she told me that Granny had passed away. And I think we were in a rental car or like a van or something. And I got out and I just started running down the street. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was just so devastated. I was so shocked because we had just talked to her a week before and we were planning to come visit her after we got back from Florida. And time was just short. And I regret still not going to go visit her. Obviously, I was a kid, so I didn't really have much say about where I was and where I could go. But for a long time, I thought that my granny died of a heart attack. And for a long time, I blamed myself because I thought that, you know, her heart broke, you know, because we were planning on to go see her and like plans changed or, you know, my dad changed the plans. And so for a long time, I blamed myself like, oh, you know, she needed to see us. We needed to see her. But I'm still trying to rest and wrestle with God's timing. You know, when your time is up, your time is up. And maybe there's a reason why I couldn't see her when she transitioned. And maybe that would have been too much for me. I don't know. But there are so many instances where that has happened. My grandmommy, the same thing happened. My grandmother, I was a day late. Coming from school, getting off the train at 30th Street Station in Philadelphia. And my mother met me and was like, she passed, talking about my grandmother. And there have been so many instances where I felt like I'm too late. Like, what is that? What's going on? Why Why couldn't I be a part, of this intimate experience in life that all of us must go through? Why couldn't I be there to hold her hand? Why couldn't I be there to see her? And again, maybe, God's wisdom. I was like, how old was I when she passed? 12, I think. So we didn't get many years together, but the years that we did get together were so rich. We're so rich. She came to my mom's house often. We went to Philly often. And I'm so grateful that we did get that time together. But I am missing. I feel like I'm missing a part of me. She was there for everything. Every milestone, every step, she was there. And then just you look up and the steps are no longer there. Like, how do you move forward? Right? When this person, the first person to validate my gifts, the first person to see me, the first person to care for me as a baby, before I could even recognize who she was, I knew who she was, And even as I speak about her, I'm crying because I miss her, right? I'm crying because I'm sad that she's no longer here with me. But I'm also just so grateful. I'm so grateful to have been blessed by such an amazing woman. And maybe I'll come back on a different episode and talk about more of my memories with her, because the memories are long and they're deep and they're impactful, and they will be with me. They will be with me always. I don't necessarily like to talk about the details around her death, but I'm sorry that she ever had to suffer anything ever in life. I'm sorry that her transition couldn't have been more peaceful. That is something that I wish God would have allowed. Of course, I'm not there, with her, but by the time she had transitioned, she was brain dead for a significant amount of time because of oxygen and things like that not being, to the brain. She had a heart attack. They brought her back, but she was oxygen deprived, and so she was brain dead. And I don't think that I could take seeing my granny in that state. And what I am grateful for is that the memory that I will always have is her laughing and smiling, her being joyous, her sleeping, her taking her time, her meditating, her taking a bath, her muumuu, her muumuu that she would wear, just the peace that she carried, the support, the safety. I will always have these beautiful memories of my granny. Granny, I love you. Girl, I miss you so much. And I'm so grateful for your life. I'm so grateful for your sacrifice. I'm so grateful for your strength and your joy, your rest, your play. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for loving so many. Thank you for giving so much. We all miss her. It really feels like after she passed away, nothing was the same. It's almost like we all lost a light. We all lost a part of ourselves, and we don't know what to do now. Like, what do you do when the matriarch, the one that has all the answers, is no longer here? I think about my grandmother, right? My grandmother who was taking care of my granny, living in that house and not having her mother down the hall anymore. I can't even imagine that. They were only 15 years apart. That was like her first person. And I remember my granny had blue rings around her eyes. And I was like, Granny, your eyes are so beautiful. Like, she had these blue rings around her brown eyes. And I noticed that happens when people get older. Like, they develop like that ring, that blue ring. And I just imagine like all the things her eyes must have seen, all the things she must have known. And of course, if I could go back in time, there are questions that I would have asked her, but I don't regret anything. I don't have any regrets. I loved Granny so fiercely. I loved her so intimately. And she loved so mightily, so mightily. I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful for her joy. I'm grateful that she is an ancestor that I carry with me. I'm grateful that I got to experience 12 years with her, 12 beautiful, wondrous years. And it's so amazing because it still feels new. Grief doesn't expire just because years have passed. I'm 34 years old. It's been 22 years since she's passed, and that wound is still fresh, because that love that we had is so potent and it's so real. And time, space, plane, spiritual plane does not separate that love. And I'm just so grateful, 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 grateful for that love. Thank you, Granny. Rest well until I see you again. Um, I always, at the end of these episodes, I know it's a little heavy, sorry y'all. But weep, mourn. If you feel sad, cry. If you want to talk to them, speak, write, journal. Who are your ancestors, whether by blood or not by blood? What have you learned from them? What can you take from them? What lessons and blessings and wisdom did they share with you, whether by word or by action? You know, my granny, it's not like my granny said to me, hey, you know, make sure that you do X, Y, and Z. Here's 5 steps to whatever. No, she just lived it. She just lived it. And she was the first person that I can recognize that modeled rest for me, because she was the first person. She was the first person. So I also want to recognize my aunts, as in my granny's sisters, my great grandmother's sisters. I met a couple of them, and another lesson that I got from them is sisterhood is everything. These sisters lived in the same area together, down the street from each other, was always over each other's houses, like just loving each other. Like there was no love greater than their sisterhood. And that's something that I will always take with me. So, Granny Elizabeth Stewart, we speak your name. We honor you. It was such a pleasure being able to live with you and be loved by you, to be seen by you. Thank you for shedding your light, sharing your light. And it's amazing because I get to share her life with you. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for holding space for me and my feelings and my granny. Thank you for holding space for your own feelings and your own mourning and your own grieving and your own ancestors. I ask you again to remember them, to honor them. I know that sometimes it's taught that it's like demonic somehow to remember our ancestors. I reject that. I rebuke that. I show this to you to say that's not true. There's beauty there. Why would anybody want you to disconnect from your ancestors, from parts of who you are? There are lessons there. There is love there. And even though my granny is not here in the physical, I still feel her love for me. And that love pushes me forward. That love keeps me going. It keeps me focused. It reminds me of who I am, who I came from, who I'm representing, who's praying for me. You know, I think about prayer, and prayer doesn't cease just because we stop talking. You feel me? Like when we speak, right? Sound waves continue whether we can hear it or not. It just keeps going. And I think about prayer in the same way. The prayers that she prayed for me as a baby, the things that she said to me, the words she's spoken over me are still going. They're still with me. She's still with me. And even her blessing, her calling me a journalist. I am a journalist. You know, like her cheering on my curiosities and not shutting them down. I will carry that with me always. I have the foundation of a woman who loves all of me, and I am so grateful to her. So again, I ask you, sorry, I know we've been wrapping this up for a minute, but name your ancestors, name your elders, name the people who make you who you are, the people who add beauty to, and maybe they're alive. Do that too. We don't have to wait until people pass away to give them their flowers. You know, I wish I could tell Granny this all, but you know, I'm trusting that she can hear this some way. You feel me? Like, but yeah, give people their flowers while they're living. Tell them what you appreciate about them. Tell them why you love them, what you've gotten from them, what you've learned from them, what you admire about them, ways that they've empowered you that maybe they don't even know how. I don't think that my granny knew that she was teaching me to rest, but she definitely taught me to rest, taught me to trust in myself, trust in God, trust the timing of my life, believe my body. This woman honored her boundary. She wasn't trying to stay up for nobody. She went to bed because she was tired. You feel me? In a world that tells you to keep going, I love the work of Tricia Hersey and Octavia Raheem and all these other people that are talking about rest. But before there were them, there was my granny, you know? And these people just reaffirm and remind me of what I may have forgotten in the fray of capitalism and, white folks being terrorists and, productivity and all this stuff. Like my elders showed me first, so I'm asking you, please, imploring you to remember them, to name them, to ask yourself, what was it about them that you remember? Even if it's just flecks of memories, a smile here, a laugh. I remember my granny laughing. I remember her smiling, and what powers do they have? What wisdom have they shared with you that you carry with you in your day to day? Like how has their life impacted your life? And what would you say to them? What would you say to them? Write them a letter. Me and my granny used to write each other letters, and this is a love letter to my granny. I realized people are not ours. People are not ours. They don't belong to us. And at some point, they have to leave us. But there's still parts of them that still are grafted into us. Like we're almost like made up of a mosaic of all the people that came before us. Genetically, yes, right? But also their lived experiences, like their wisdom, our experiences with them, they also make up who we are. So I carry Granny with me everywhere I go. Even if I cannot see her face to face, I still speak to her in my heart. I still think of her fondly. I still look at her funeral program, and mourn her and miss her and talk to her. I talk to my ancestors. I believe they're listening. I believe that their prayers are still praying, like still going on for me. I believe their affirmations are still living on in me and around me. And I implore you to do the same, to take some time to reflect on your ancestors and your loved ones because they're with you. Okay, so thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for honoring my granny with me, Elizabeth Stewart. Again, we speak your name. We love you. We honor you. And until next time, y'all, love yourselves, love each other, love your ancestors, love the earth. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to each other. And I will talk to you all in the next episode.